Hey guys, welcome to What's Next, brought to you by the Circle Club. My name is Corey, and I'm joined here today with Tyrone. We are your guides here to break down and simplify the complexity of the MCU.
So pretty much Corey and I decided, hey, let's rank all the Marvel movies. And then we were like, wait a minute, we haven't seen these movies in like a decade and a half, 15 years. So we're like, let's rewatch these, let's rank them, figure out, give a little details now that we have all this information. And I'm just super excited. And here we are on episode 2 with The Incredible Hulk.
Yeah, but before we get started, make sure to follow us on our socials, subscribe to our channel, and join us on this journey to ponder the question.
What's next?
Fair warning before you watch this video, there will be some slight spoilers throughout this video. So if you haven't seen The Incredible Hulk, go take a watch, come back, and let us know your thoughts. Here at What's Next, we have 8 categories to break down the movie. Go ahead and pause the video to check those out. And today we have The Incredible Hulk. Scientist Bruce Banner, played by the incredible Ed Norton, desperately seeks a cure for his gamma radiation that contaminated his cells and turns him into the Hulk. He's forced to go into hiding from his true love, Betty Ross, played by Liv Tyler, and he's forced to hide from his nemesis, General Thunderbolt Ross, played by William Hurt, who actually does end up later sticking around in the MCU. First off, Corey, what do you think about the plot of this movie?
Yeah, I thought it had some potential. I think for me, there was a lot of elements going on. I was very intrigued by the secret Mr. Blue relationship. I was intrigued by the Thunderbolt Ross wanting like the Hulk's blood. I think where I started to lose interest was just the balance of all these things going on. One thing for me, a big vibe I got from this movie was too much of like a Beauty and the Beast, King Kong and the Woman, where they have this love story going on with Bruce and Betty, but it's just like too much going on here with all the different aspects. And I think for me, where I ended up landing was like a 2 out of 5 on the plot, because I don't really feel like they fully executed, but did have some elements there that could have made it really good.
Yeah, for me, I would have given it a 2.5. I think there were some good ingredients, but it just led to a mediocre meal. There was a lot of strong elements, as you said, but they were doing too much. And I thought it was kind of cool to see how the world feels about the character, the Hulk. And the visuals were groundbreaking and it looked cool. But I feel we didn't learn enough about Bruce Banner. Like, it was so focused on the Hulk. And as you said, I was getting big King Kong vibes, which makes sense because I think there was a couple King Kong movies around this time. So, but it was too much Incredible Hulk and not enough Bruce Banner.
I think that's a good point, right? Like we kind of just, a lot of times, like you think about the Spider-Man remakes, like we don't want to dive into like seeing how Peter got bit again. But I think this movie needed more of the Bruce, especially when you look later on. I don't think they visited that too much, and to the point of like the Beauty and the Beast. Yeah, it was just the elements of what they were trying to do with Hulk there didn't balance well. What about the visuals? How did you feel about the visuals of this movie?
So the visuals were kind of shocking. Like, I mean, I for a movie that the plot was a bit messy, like the visuals it hit for me. I gave him a 4.5 out of 5. The intro sequence is so well done. Like just showing his story, how he became the Hulk. And to your point, like there was already a movie called The Hulk before that really flopped and everyone saw the origin. And I think there was kind of this like vibe of like, we don't need to rewatch Spider-Man. We don't need to watch the origin of Batman. We don't need to see the origin of Spider-Man because everyone knows. But this movie really could have used some sort of Bruce injection. But what they do really well is with the Hulk. And I thought that was nice what they did with the intro sequence. The Hulk looked real, which is a weird thing to say, especially for this time. The shower scene where it turns into bullets when he's having that PTSD, that was really cool. And there's over 700 visual effects shots that were created in post-production from this, with like motion capture and CGI to make the film happen. And like, it was definitely groundbreaking for its time, what they did. So from a visual standpoint, it did really well. Some of the scenes though, like you said, when like they got King Kong kind of vibe, I wasn't feeling that, but for a lot of the stuff, it did hit for me. How about you?
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point with like some of the forced scenes. Like I specifically think of that cave scene just seems too forced. But they did do a pretty good job with representing Hulk in here. And it goes back to like what we said in our last video with Iron Man. They do a great job of injecting it where it feels real in the real world, especially with the actors that are acting around it, right?
Right.
When you think of Blonsky and him talking in the middle of Culver University, right? Like it feels real there. I think for me, it didn't have anything jaw dropping. So this is where my score takes a little bit of a hit. But there are aspects like you think about the Bruce transfusion when he finally meets up with Mr. Blue and watching him go from Bruce to Hulk and back to Bruce. That visual was really cool.
Yeah.
But other than that, I think it was just a 3 out of 5 for me when it came to the visuals. But what about the casting? How do we feel about the casting in this movie, Tyrone?
So right off the bat, I gave this a 3.8 out of 5 for casting, which is probably a little bit of a shock. Some cool little side things. Roger Harrington from Spider-Man is in this. He's like a lab student, and he ends up becoming the teacher in Spider-Man. Like, I think if you watch No Way Home, he's that teacher in the hallway who was like, who had the glasses, and he was like, he made the shrine for Peter. So that was kind of cool, little nod that they kept him throughout this entire thing. Thaddeus Ross, the U.S. general, he looks solid for the part. I didn't think Norton did too bad. And honestly, his girlfriend and him, like they really did feel in love. I think where it felt the casting was off was it felt correct in like a good casting for this movie, but when you talk about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I think there was a lot of like just misses, and like the boyfriend of Betty, thank you. That just didn't feel right. I think it was Ty from Modern Family. Like that was a little bit of a weird of a casting choice. And I just think long term, a lot of these casting people, it couldn't have worked, but there were some people that I was like, yeah, that I could see that.
Yeah, I think for me, when it comes to the casting, like the best person that they cast on this was definitely Thunderbolt Ross. Like he just gives those vibes, the way he acts it out. Like I feel Thunderbolt Ross there. And this is where I think my score comes in, and it reminds me a little bit about the Terrence Howard and what we talked about with Iron Man, right? Like Edward Norton definitely acted very well in this, but I felt too much Edward Norton and not enough of that Bruce Banner. I think that plays into what we've been talking about in this video of needing more Bruce. I needed more of that MCU feel out of Bruce too. And when we go look later on in the MCU and the tonality that they try to set with this character, and where I think they missed in kind of the plot and some of the things they did, I don't think it fully got you buying into Bruce Banner in the Hulk in the way we bought into like Tony Stark, so to speak, in Iron Man. So I landed on like a 2.5 out of 5. I thought ultimately Norton did do good acting, but just didn't give me that feel of Bruce. And ultimately, I think the thing that helps it out a lot is Thunderbolt Ross too.
Action. Hiya. Woo. Corey, what did you think about the action of The Incredible Hulk?
Yeah, so I thought it had some moments, truthfully. Like the big thing to me was like the Culver University scene. Right? When you really first get to see Hulk getting after it, right? And I think it was such a longer action sequence with kind of multiple things going on and some in different things that they had going on really in that scene that made it very interesting. And I did enjoy the fight between Abomination and the Hulk at the end. I think some of my problems kind of also ties into things we've talked about, like the visuals. I just felt like there was too much CGI going on at that end scene. But overall, when it comes to the action, it did have some moments, nothing really jaw-dropping though. So I really landed on a 2.5 out of 5. And I think it was that Culver University scene that really made me feel in that to feel comfortable putting it where it's at.
Yeah, I think for me, I'd probably give the action like a 3.4, maybe 3.2. Probably so 3.3. But I would give it that just because I really like that scene as well. I thought the scene where he's at the university getting shot down, that was just, it really stood out. Again, I'm gonna give them just a little bit of a boost because of the time period that they were in. But where it was kind of dragging for me is I was getting like Bourne Ultimatum vibes at some point where he's running through cities and jumping from building to building, and it's like it just, again, it just felt kind of cliche, like we've seen it. So it just didn't really have that elevation that we talk about for me either.
I agree with you. And I think like I said, the Culver has some unique elements to it, but overall, the entire movie, there's nothing really that blows
Yeah.
you away and makes you think there's different elements that they provide that other movies won't.
All right, so why don't we jump into humor? Did this movie make you laugh at all?
Yeah, this one was pretty bad when it came to the humor for me. They tried to give you like a cheap laugh with the whole New York City cab scene. Like that's so cliche, so played out to me. Like, yeah, we get it. New York taxis stink, right? But
right.
I think there was other moments that they attempted to try to give humor. It just was so unmemorable and didn't hit the spot. I don't even really think I laughed at one point in this movie. So I gave it a 1 out of 5 on the humor. I really didn't think they did well with that.
So I mean, I gave it a 2.2, and on our scale, that's really just not really understanding demographics and jokes missing the mark, a lot of cliches and low-hanging fruit. And there was a lot of, to me, there was like, first off, the Hulk smash, that could have been a lot funnier. They did it way too early.
Any last words? Hulk! Smash!
There was a lot of misogynistic jokes in this that I was just like, it just, whereas Iron Man, where it was like kind of cheeky about it, this felt, and this is my point of where, if you watched the last video we were talking about, it's how it's executed, the way Robert Downey did it, it felt kind of like cutesy, where this kind of felt more shock jock, and it was like, it just didn't hold up, and I wasn't feeling it. There was a lot more misses than hits, but I thought it was like a 2.2 because it really was getting, for me, it was closer to a 2, but right near that 2.5 where there was just low-hanging fruits, where I can see some people out there probably laughing at it, but not me.
Yeah, I think the only moment that made me give a little bit of a chuckle was when Betty tried to offer him stretchy pants, and they were these big purple stretchy pants. Right. That was like the only chuckle they got out of me on this. So it was pretty low. How'd you feel about the music in this, Tyrone?
The music was shocking. Like I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. I thought when it was intense, it really felt intense and you could feel it, but there was nothing super memorable about it. Like but like I said, like the highs when he's like, oh God, run it, like the music, you can hear it building up and it's intense and whoa, but then like there was no contrast with that. So when he's just being Bruce, the music's pretty forgettable.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I think for me, it's forgettable too. Like I couldn't even tell you what music was in this or what it was like, right? I think for me, like, I think what I want to see is kind of a balance between actual songs and then just instruments that set the tone for the scene, right? And I felt like they did have like some of those moments, like when Hulk's really getting after it, they're building the instruments to get you to understand that something's about to happen, right? But other than that, like I don't remember any music that like got me intrigued, got my head bumping. Even when they did those instruments, it didn't really get me like, okay, like what's about to happen right now? I just felt like it was very basic, very typical, right? So when I'm not getting anything really out of the music, or it's not really uplifting me, that to me means the music wasn't that good. So I really thought this was like a 1 out of 5 as well when it came to the music.
When you think about how it was just the intensity, and I can't even hum to you right now what that intensity was, then you're talking about a 2.2. So for me, the music is probably a 2.2 out of 5.
I'm glad I could influence you there.
Exactly.
So that being said, right, we've given out some tough scores as we've gone through our ranking system. Tyrone, is this actually worth the watch though?
So, I would say yes, but from like plot points and just because, you want to continue watching the rest of the Marvel movies. I think for some people, honestly, like I do think there is some entertaining factor here. Like some people just like an entertaining movie, Hulk smash, things breaking. But for those who are looking kind of for that, what we got in Iron Man 1, I don't think you're going to find that here, but there's definitely something here like that's worth watching. Like I will say this, before we watched this, I was like, dude, I don't want to watch this at all, like horrible. But it did keep my attention. I can admit that. It did keep my attention. So I'd say, yes, if you're looking for something entertaining, if it's on halfway or playing in the background, one of those type of movies. How about you?
Yeah, so for me, I'm being realistic about it. I really don't think you need to watch this, truthfully. Like, you could easily put on our video, put on a quick recap video.
Yeah.
To me, the best part of this entire movie is the end credit scene and the cameo you see there.
Stale beer and defeat. I hate to say I told you so, General, but that super soldier program was put on ice for a reason. I've always felt that hardware was much more reliable.
Stark.
General.
I won't indulge that just yet to who and what that was. But ultimately, I think if you are really getting into these movies later on down the line and you are fully about the MCU, if you go back and watch this movie, you're going to notice a lot of references to things that are going to come up, whether it be Shield, whether it be Thunderbolt Ross, whether it be the Super Soldier Serum, right? Shield. There are a lot of references there.
Right.
So you can look back after having watched a lot of these movies and appreciate the teases that they did have for you. But ultimately, do I think it is a must watch and need to watch? No, I don't think so. I think you could pass on this movie.
Yeah, I would say, as far as worth the watch, I would say it's worth watching for those plots and details. And like Corey said, but do you have to watch? No, you don't have to watch this movie. And that's why I think I end up giving this movie a 3.1 out of 5. How about you?
Yeah, I'm a harsh critic, Tyrone, as you know. Yes. I gave it a 2.5. So I didn't really think it was that great. This ended up landing in my tier ranking as a D tier movie. What about you?
Yeah, and I put it at a 3.1 because like I said, I think there are people out there who just like those action-y break things on fire movies. Those people will enjoy it. But I think some people who are looking more for like a plot-driven thing and the wows of some of these more recent Marvel movies, it's just not there. This was a low C tier movie for me. Personally, I would probably put it in the D tier, but I think it's probably a low C tier just because there's some enjoyable moments, but it misses the wow factor. There are important elements, but not super important. There's cool technical film moments. Like if you're like want to just kind of take a time machine to see, what were CGI like during that time period, it does that. And but I do think overall it's kind of disappointing for Marvel, which is why I think it's a low C tier. Well, on that note, that was The Incredible Hulk. But before we head out, I wanted to mention a quick side note. So there was a lot of talk about a potential sequel with this, and there was this whole thing about multiple parts that were left out of it, and this is supposed to be like a chapter 1. So I kind of think that plays into it a little bit as well. And what's interesting is there's a lot of teasing. And what I noticed just doing my homework, looking back on this, Marvel used to like really release a lot of news and tell people. It's not as tight-lipped and secret, which is interesting as well. But I definitely think that the third Hulk, so they had Eric Bana as the first one, Ed Norton as the second, but I think Mark Ruffalo was really where they nailed it. But yeah, Corey, that's what I got for you. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point. I think looking back in hindsight, you can look at Mark Ruffalo and say, he is exactly what the MCU needed out of Hulk. And I think to your point, right, like if you look as we move forward here, we'll get deeper into it. And I look at the Thor movies and the potential that can happen down the line when they can really execute on a character. But there may have been a chance for Norton and Hulk to really develop into something. But I think they just missed the mark on this first one, which ended up leading them down the path of making the switches that they did. And ultimately, I think looking back, it was for the better at the end of the day. But all right, guys. Thank you for watching our movie. Make sure you comment below. We want to hear what you think. If you have any differing opinions, make sure to follow all of our socials as well. Subscribe to this channel. Tyrone, tell them what's next.
All right, guys. So next we have Iron Man 2. And oh boy, did I like this movie. The intro, woo, you guys, you don't know what you're waiting for, man. Like this is Iron Man 2. Oh yeah, like the stench of this movie. Ugh, get out your mouth, because Iron Man 2, you're gonna love it. So make sure you follow our socials. Thanks. Again, the ethos of the Circle Club is to just be you. We want people to have conversations back and forth. The internet gets really nasty back and forth. It's not that deep. I mean, we're talking about movies. We're talking about people in space. A fucking guy with an Iron Man suit. Come on, you know? So, all right, comment below. Let us know what you think. And Corey, thanks again. This has been a blast. Make sure you tune into our next video. Signing out.